That's not what I want. Okay, we're going to start on the Unit 4 Economics Finance exam here. We just go through the idea. The idea is you're a financial planner looking to break into the business, and you have your first big client, Phil. Phil is a married 34-year-old father of 3. He is self-employed, makes roughly $63,570 a year. He and his wife own their own home, but are currently paying on a mortgage. He is worried about getting his kids to college and wants to reduce his family's largest expenditure in order to save more money for investing for that purpose. Now, I'm going to come back to these questions here and just let you know that your job as Phil's financial advisor is take the picture of his life and make him an investment plan for him that meets his needs. And you would be graded on the following: the use of correct terminology, consideration of tax, cash management, risk management, and philosophy and strategy in designing Phil's investment plan, evidence of understanding how different assets and vehicles work, knowledge of how to evaluate stocks and determine whether they are worth investing in. And the more detail and thought you can put into developing the plan, the higher your grade. Be able to briefly explain why you are recommending what you are in the plan. We're going to address each of these facts as a question, place them on a separate sheet of paper, make sure your name's on the test. Of course, obviously it's not due on May 19th. May 9th. And we'll work on the assignment in class, where we would have, although a great deal of it may need to have been done outside class. They can use their notes, work together. So let's start 9 questions here. Let's start with number 1. Phil is currently invested in a stock that he purchased 5 months ago, but is unsure what to do with it as it has increased in value. Well, what you want to remember in this is that investing for the long term is what gets you that capital gains tax rate. So 12 months, he needs to hold on to it at least to get the flat 15% capital gains tax rate. So we'd have to be worried about what his marginal tax rate is and whether or not that would be higher than the 15%, which most likely it would be given $63,000 a year income. So in this case, what we would probably advise Phil to do is either hold on to the stock until the end of the 12 months or donate the stock in kind to a charity and take the tax right off. Because remember, you can still do that. Instead of selling the stock, using the cash to do that, you can just give them the stock, let them hold on to it till it appreciates, and then sell it to keep the money for their charity, but you get the tax write-off. So that's what I would be looking for number 1. Number 2, his kids always need something: doctor, dentist visits, fee for school activities, sports equipment, etc. So he does not want to tie up all of his money where he cannot get to it easily. In other words, what he's looking for is he needs money quickly, which means that he wants his assets to be liquid. That would be the term I would be looking for, is liquidity. And so what are some very liquid assets? Well, that's when we get into cash management. So he could put it into a checking account, he could put it into a savings account, money market mutual fund, a CD, just something that he could, very quickly liquidate and get the money out of. Number 3, his wife works part-time so she can stay at home with the kids for the most part, and her income alone would not really pay for the house or pay for their goal of sending their kids to college. So with her part-time work, so she can stay home, we really need to worry about his income because apparently it's his income that pays for the house and sending the kids to college. Now, what would happen if he lost his income in some way? Like, let's say he's in a horrible car accident that disables him, or he dies. Well, remember, this is where we get into risk management. The severity of that loss would be high. The frequency would be low. I mean, you only die once if you die. So if with that in mind, what we would look to do using that square we talked about with risk management, when the severity is high and the frequency is low, we would want to transfer that risk to an insurance policy to cover her in those instances. Number 4, Phil lives in a middle-class neighborhood. He knows of a couple of houses that have been broken into there in the past few years. He also drives a lot for his job and meets a lot of strangers at work sites where he sometimes does not feel safe. Okay, so notice that he meets a lot of, and he sometimes doesn't feel safe. He lives in a middle-class neighborhood. So if his home was broken into and things of value were stolen, they would be hard to replace. So we've got a high severity of loss. And so in the case of his home, high severity of loss, low frequency, we might be better to transfer that risk. And so a homeowner's insurance policy might work out very good in terms of his home. Driving a lot for his job, well, that's high frequency, high severity. That might be something more either to avoid or reduce according to our square. And he meets a lot of strangers at work sites where sometimes does not feel safe. Well, again, avoid or reduce are probably his best options since it's a lot. Or he can assume the risk, obviously, here. Maybe carry a firearm or some sort of mace or something like that. Number 5, his wife's workplace does offer a matching 401k for retirement, but Phil felt they needed the money right now, and so they do not contribute to it. Well, we have to think back to what is the priority of money, and the first priority of money is free money, and that's what his wife's matching plan would do, give free money. And so the first thing they would want to do in this regard is sign her up for that 401k and take advantage of that free money because of the priority of money. Number 6, Phil and his wife have not started planning for retirement yet because it seems a long way off for them. When he thinks about retirement, though, he thinks that he and his wife will purchase a small home in the country and just enjoy their grandchildren and nature. Nothing too fancy. Okay, so he hasn't started planning for retirement yet because it seems a long way off. But you've got to remember the time value of money and that the interest it earns and the inflationary rate make a dollar set aside today worth more than a dollar set aside tomorrow or in the future. So he should start planning for retirement right now. Now, if you look at what he wants in the future, small home in the country, just enjoys grandchildren and nature, nothing too fancy, he's probably going to be then in a lower tax bracket when he retires than he is in right now, which means what type of retirement plan should he want? He probably wants a retirement plan where the taxation is deferred until the future because he's probably going to be in a lower tax bracket at that time. So we're looking at traditional IRAs, traditional 401ks, things of that nature. Number 7, he wants to start investing in order to save for college for his kids who are 12, 9, and 4, retirement and a dream vacation, but is not sure what to get into. So let's look at, these are actually 3 different age groups here. If we think a kid will go to college at 18, then with the 12-year-old, he's only got 6 years. With the 9-year-old, he has 9 years. With the 4-year-old, he's got 14 years. So we're kind of looking at short, mid, and long-term planning here. With the short-term plan, he's got to come up with money pretty quickly, which means he's probably going to have to take a risk. Don't forget the risk-time exchange here. And so with the 12-year-old, he's probably better off, putting it into stock market or, something a little bit more risky with a higher return. For the 9-year-old, he's probably, he's got a little bit more time, so he doesn't have to take as much risk. So maybe Series EE or Series I bonds, savings bonds, because then he can take that money and it's tax-free if he pays for the college with the return on those bonds. And then for the 4-year-old, he's got a much longer time. So maybe a 529 savings plan like the Bright Start college plan in Illinois, where you pay for the college right now, then you can write it off your taxes as well. Retirement, we've kind of already talked about, maybe put in a traditional IRA. A dream vacation, that's something he's just going to want to set aside for, and it depends on how soon he wants to take the dream vacation. But given it's his dream vacation, this is probably more long-term planning. And so, long-term down the road, he could probably put it in something fairly liquid because it's for a vacation, or he could invest it probably in something a little more long-term that's less liquid in order to see it grow. So those are the kind of things I would be looking for you to tell me as to, this is what he needs to consider. All right, number 8. A friend of his says that investing in the Aptar Group is the way to go. Now, this would take a little bit of research, because what we have to do right now then is we're going to have to go and look up Aptar. So let's go online here, and we're going to look for stock financial information. Oops, it helped if I separated the words here. On Aptar. All right, so here's the annual report for Aptar, but what are we looking for here? Well, if we remember from our stock valuation thing, there's 3 different parameters that we want to evaluate in order to understand the strength of the company: financial stability, the performance indicators, and the valuation parameters. And so, like I said, these can be easily found online. So probably the current ratio is something that we'd want to know. So we'll go stock financial information on Aptar, and let's just go current ratio and see what number we get. Let's see if we can find it on this. The current ratio over the past 10 years, 1.7. Okay, so we got a 1.7. We're going to take note of that, 1.7. And let's do another one here. So let's look again at our valuation parameters, performance indicator. Let's look at let's use the operating margin. Operating margin, Aptar. Negative 3.08 for the first quarter of 2020, negative 8.89 for the past year. So they're at 12.26 is currently their operating profit margin, which according to this website puts them at number 1058. In number 2 in the chemicals, plastic, and rubber industry, which is what Aptar deals in. So which is nice to find that. So the last one we want to look at here is not a performance indicator, but a valuation parameter. And the most common one of those is the PE ratio. So we are going to go over here and we're going to put PE ratio, Aptar. And that currently is 24.3. That's higher than the average in its market, which is 11.8. And so in terms of Aptar, let's stop sharing this and go back to our test. A friend of his says that investing in Aptar is the way to go. It looks like it. It's got a great operating margin because if you recall, let me go back and show you our valuation thing again. I've got to wait for this thing to kind of go away. There we go. All right, when it comes to the current ratio, if this is less than 1.5, it's good. And if you remember, that number was a 1.7. Okay, so maybe not the best there in regards to that, but pretty close. And especially when you compare the other thing, that like the operating profit margin, they're number 2 in their industry. The price to earnings ratio is higher than the average in its market. So these things kind of look pretty good here. And so when he says Aptar is the way to go, I would agree with that recommendation. But notice I didn't just take his word for it. I provided the quantitative evidence out there of that triangulation of stock valuation in order to make that judgment. And so in number 9, it says he would like to know what is a good stock to invest in and why. I would do those exact same things except on a stock of my choosing instead of using a stock of his choosing. And then that would be the 9 questions that you would be answering on this exam in total. This exam was intended to be pretty easy. Sometimes I even do it together in class, and we just, we'll talk about it and write down the answers. But I know it's the end of the semester. I know proms probably just happened in a normal circumstance, and that people would be, working towards, getting out for the summer, their minds not necessarily in class. So hence kind of the ease of this test, which works well given our current circumstances. So if you want to do this test for extra credit, given that I've given you the answers to write down, you write it out, you submit it to me, you can take a picture of it, save it as a PDF attachment, whatever. Just get it to me. I will give you 100% on top of some previous test score, so it's extra credit in the test taking category. Otherwise, that's it for the semester. We're done. Normally I would have people who needed to would submit their paper for the final exam, but you don't have to worry about that. And then certainly, there would be things to do on the final exam day, like help me clean my room for the end of the semester, but that's done. So we are done in this class for the semester, and congratulations if you passed. I tried to make it challenging so that you learn something, but I also tried to make it informative so that what you learned was actually valuable to you going forward into the future. We missed a lot because of the COVID-19 stuff, I know, and just the non-incentive to participate for those of you who weren't with me the whole semester. For those of you who were, thank you. I really try hard to work to provide you with something valuable that you can use in your life. And so I appreciate you appreciating my work by staying with me. For those of you who haven't attended or haven't been able, please go out and watch the stuff. I've given you the video links. There's a channel for economics, under those links that you can watch all the videos from the March 17th date to today. So hopefully you go out, you get something from it, because like I said, I'm not a grade guy. I'm more of a, the value of what I'm teaching you can help you in your life type guy. And that's what I hope this is doing. Otherwise, for most of you, I will see you next year. For seniors, stay in touch, friend request me on Facebook. I'd love to keep up with you. You're all still my kids. So hopefully we'll all be together next semester. Have a great summer. And I hope to see you at the beginning of the school year over something than a computer.